Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Newark and Sherwood series, a district of 84 civil parishes right in the centre of Nottinghamshire. Come with me as we delve into one of them. Welcome back to Newark and Sherwood, everybody. Now, beginning this one, which is going to be quite a long walk, outside an old school. And there are two clues as to why this is an old school. Firstly, the architecture kind of gives it away, but also there are signs, one on that side of the gates and one on that side of the gates, that say old school or schoolhouse. I believe it's a block of apartments now, but isn't it an impressive building? It's the first thing we're going to talk about in the parish of Epperstone. This Newark and Sherwood video is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find a link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to Eppiston, folks. Once again, we're in the electoral ward of Dover Beck in the southwest of the Newark and Sherwood District. With a population of exactly 600, Eppiston is a commuter village. Most of the people who live here travel to work in Nottingham, some 9 miles away. Episton has a parish area totalling 2,343 acres, a lot of which is wooded. It seems to contain an Old English personal name, Eorphere, making this Eorphere's farm or settlement. The village was designated a conservation area in 1972. Apart from the Grade 1 listed church, the village has 16 Grade 2 listed buildings, including many barn conversions and 3 dovecotes. Episton has been described in the past as having a very distinctive character. The approach to the village from the west is akin to driving through a tunnel formed by overhanging trees, which creates a strong sense of arrival. Eppiston's main street used to be the B688 until the Epperstone bypass, the A6097, was completed in 1932. It was developed in the 1920s as a route for traffic to avoid Nottingham. It means Eppiston is generally quiet. Famous people to have lived here have included the industrialist Sir Francis Lee, cleric John Mastin, and the classical scholar Evelyn Abbott. So this is Eppiston. Let's go walking. Beginning at the western end of the village, here we have the old school. Eppiston's original 1756 schoolhouse was located in Toad Lane. It moved to this much larger building in 1855 when the earlier schoolhouse was sold. It lasted until 1985, and when it closed, pupils moved to nearby Loudham. Our next major landmark is kind of hard to miss. All these buildings are part of the impressive Epperstone Manor. Both the house and the tall pigeon cote, seen here, are listed. All this was once owned by the industrialist Sir Francis Lee, who founded Lee's Malleable Castings Vulcan Ironworks in Derby. He also owned Lee's Recreation Centre, in which he attempted to establish professional organised baseball. It became the baseball ground, the former home of Derby County Football Club. Epperstone Manor was also used as a recuperation hospital in World War II, and it became the HQ of Nottinghamshire Police a bit later. So some pretty impressive buildings, and we haven't really walked all that far yet. I've just got as far as Steeple Cottage, which is aptly named because behind me is the church. You can't really see it at the moment because it's behind some trees, and you can see it's raised up slightly on that wall there. There's also a war memorial right there. We're going to talk about both of those things in the next segment. Set into the high wall in front of the church is Epperstone's War Memorial. Among those who served in World War I were Sir Francis Lee's two sons, Christopher and Maurice. Let's head into the church. This is the Church of the Holy Cross, and it dates from the 13th century. It was restored in 1853 and 1879. It's built primarily of Epperstone stone. Amongst its notable features would be the clock on its tower, which was originally installed in 1686 and then replaced in 1854. This one was open, so let's have a look inside. Several interior features date back as far as the 14th century. These include the end window of the aisle, the small buttress on the north wall, and the doorway beside it. The nave roof is 17th century work, and there are 4 bells in the tower, but only 3 can be rung as such because one bell serves the clock, which chimes on the hour. Holy Cross is part of a joint parish with churches at Gonalston, Woodborough and Oxton. Can't deny it's definitely one impressive church, this. Quite a big one as well, and you might be able to tell from my echo that it's quite cavernous. Lovely church, absolutely fantastic. Plenty of things to look at and get your teeth into in here. Right, we're going to exit stage right and head into the main village more now and see what else we can find. If you exit the church to the north via the somewhat lengthy churchyard, you'll come to church cottages. Around the back of these, there's a field. Now, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, listen up. This field supposedly inspired Tolkien to create the Barrow Downs, featured in the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan myself, but I know some of you will find that interesting. Next, I made my way along a footpath as best I could, past this horse. And at the end of the path, it brings us out onto Chapel Lane. This is Epperstone's alternative main street, running as it does from north to south. It's not called Chapel Lane for nothing either. Here we have the former Wesleyan Methodist Chapel, which was built in around 1800. It closed for worship in 1973. Chapel Lane is wholly residential. It has some stunning examples of 18th and 19th century red brick houses, leaving you in no doubt that you're definitely in Nottinghamshire. Okay, I'm as far down Chapel Lane as Church Lane. Now, in a moment, I'll be taking a left turn as you look at it, right turn for me, along a footpath which runs towards the playing field. That'll be our next sort of main section. But before I do that, I need to continue down Chapel Lane for a little bit further because there are a couple of landmarks just down there. And then we'll take that path off to your left. Wherever there's a Wesleyan chapel, there's bound to be a primitive one too, and here it is. This functioned from 1851 until 1904. Both chapels are now private houses. Opposite that we have the Manor, which is not to be confused with Epperstone Manor. For some reason, the village has 2. Now let's take that footpath to Hag Lane. Epperstone's rights of way are clearly demarcated everywhere you go, and they're well looked after. This is no exception. The path passes to the north of the village where you get some absolutely amazing scenery. Gentle, rolling countryside, not too dissimilar to the East Yorkshire Wolds. Epperstone lies in a valley, so there are some streams out here. This one is called Dover Beck, which joins with Dover Beck between the village and the Epperstone bypass. And now we've reached Hag Lane, another typically Nottinghamshire street, lined with historic rural buildings and all that lovely countryside charm. Okay, now that we've reached the end of Hag Lane, we take a left turn and we're heading towards Epperstone's sports and recreational area. There's also a wooded area down there as well called Bourne Wood, which has its own little tale to tell as well. Let's check those out next. Epperstone Village Hall is located in the far southeast of the village. It was built in 1992 and provides the village with a fabulous community space. Behind the hall are 2 artificial tennis courts, which are floodlit. These form just one part of the raft of sporting facilities on offer here. The adjacent playing field features a large children's play area with a range of equipment, including swings, slides and climbing frames. Sorry though folks, I wasn't up for attempting the adventure trail here. There's also a couple of football pitches and a full-sized cricket pitch, which is used by Epperstone Cricket Club, who play in the South Notts Cricket League. In the far corner of the playing field is the attractive little Bourne Wood, which began its life as a grove. It was planted by some local children to celebrate the millennium. It originally consisted of 100 trees and shrubs, but an additional strip was later added, replacing some of the smaller trees which had become shaded out. Okay, so now for the long walk back along the main streets past all the other things that Epperstone has to offer. It's a long way, so let's go. This building looks like an old chapel or a school, but it's never been either. It's called the Old House and is another of Epperstone's finest listed buildings. Opposite a house called Hazelwich, here's the village pinfold, which is made of dressed coursed rubble. Looking in great condition, it dates from the late 18th century. Here's another of Epperstone's dovecotes. This is the only one of the 3 which stands on its own and features brickwork typical of Nottinghamshire. Next is the village's one and only pub, the Cross Keys. This reopened in mid-2015 after a 9-month refurbishment. Fun fact, the Cross Keys are a heraldic symbol of heaven and St. Peter. You'll know that next time you set foot in a pub with that name. A few steps away, there's a George VI postbox set into this wall. And lastly, we have Bumble's Tea Room, which has recently gone up for sale. Stick around until the end. The tea room has a secret garden, which I found later. Okay, apologies if I look a bit wonky, but the ground is very uneven here right in the village centre. So there we go, we've walked as far as the village centre. You can see we've got a bus stop here and we've got an old red phone box as well. There's a defib machine in the phone box. As far as the buses go, it's the 747, and no, that is not an aircraft. I think I've said that before in a different episode, haven't I? That's what you can catch here. There's also a parish notice board right there, so I'm going to go and put a card on that now. And you might have seen there in the rest off section, there's a wild garden here, which is private, but Bumble's customers can use it. It's this here. So I guess if you've bought some food or some drink from Bumble's, it's just a nice place to sit and eat or drink it, I suppose. Really, really good. Really, really good. Okay, that's the end of the walk. All I've got to do from here is walk straight back up past the Episton Manor and the church to the car, and that's been the parish of Epperstone, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. Time for me to move on to my next one. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.